It's 7 p.m., so we will call to order the December 11th, 2023 meeting of the Westfield City Council. Would everybody please stand and address the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've got Minister Mike Linville from the Eagle Creek Friends Church to address us.
Let us pray. Our Lord and our God, we do once again bow our heads and our hearts to you. We implore, Lord, of you that you would bestow upon each and every one of us the wisdom that brought your Son, Jesus Christ, into this world. We pray, Lord, that each one of us present today would be cognizant of your spirit and your love and your wisdom and reflect your ideals for our fair community. We pray these things in the name of our lovely Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Honorable Chairman and members of this council, may the wisdom of God descend upon you, and may as God gave you the gift of his Son, may we also give the gift of peace and tranquility to our community. Amen.
Thank you, Michael. Marla Ayler, can you please note the presence of a quorum?
Cindy Spoljaric.
Here.
Scott Willis.
Here.
Victor McCarty.
Here.
Jake Gilbert.
Here.
Troy Patton.
Here.
Mike Johns.
Here.
Scott Fry.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. There are no changes to announce to this evening's agenda. Our first item of business then is approval of the meeting minutes from our November 27th meeting. Councilors, do you have any questions or changes to the minutes from that meeting? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second. Cindy.
Motion made by Victor McCarty, seconded by Cindy Spoljaric. Marla, call the roll, please.
Jake Gilbert.
Here, or yes.
Troy Patton.
Yeah.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Cindy Spoljaric. Motion carries 7-0.
Next item is the claims docket for this evening, December 11th, 2023, the approval of that docket. Again, councilors, do we have any questions or comments regarding the claims docket this evening? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the claims docket?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Willis, seconded by Councilor Patton to approve the claims docket for December 11th, 2023. Marla, would you please call the roll?
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Cindy Spoljaric.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. We've got a couple, 2 or 3 reports this evening. The first report is a update on State Road 32 from Jonathan Nail.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works, City of Westfield. So I'm sure you've seen this slide plenty of times already, but just as a reminder, when we talk about the State Road 32 project, we're talking about in our downtown area between Poplar Street, which is just west off the slide, and East Street, which is that roundabout area on the right side of the slide, with Union Street in the middle. So we have completed stage 3 plans. We're working through final tracings, 100% plans going into NDOT. This includes streetscape elements that I'll touch on here in a little bit. All right-of-way parcels have been secured by NDOT, and we were just named over the weekend the IRWA Indiana Chapter 10 Project of the Year for right-of-way acquisition. IRWA is the International Right-of-Way Association. It is a right-of-way acquisition organization. So a nice honor to be recognized for that. Certainly a complicated right-of-way acquisition project that the state completed. We have continued our historic mitigation coordination. I'll touch on that in a few slides. And we have a building moving contract for the 102 South Union Building, also known as the Green Building, that will be looking for approval at Board of Public Works on Wednesday. As a reminder on the timeline, NDOT let a demolition contract March 15th this year. That demolition work has been completed with the exception of a little bit of remaining work around the Green Building to get it ready for that move. And then we are currently on a March construction contract letting with NDOT with utility relocation ongoing prior to road construction. So historic mitigation, I see a couple of my advisory team members in the audience, and I wanted to touch base on what we've been talking about with that group. I do need to get another advisory team meeting on the books, hopefully early January, most likely. But I did want to kind of bring to the attention of the council some of the stuff we've worked on with the advisory team. So if you recall, this project impacted several historic buildings in the downtown Westfield Historic District. Part of our mitigation efforts carved out the inside of roundabouts at Poplar and at East Street for some historic signage or mitigation items. Our advisory team, which is comprised of several stakeholders, including NDOT, City of Westfield, Indiana Landmarks, Westfield Preservation Alliance, and some property owners along the corridor, including Judy Shuck. We got together, they looked at some of these items and kind of came up with a couple of symbols that really stood out in Westfield's history, with it being a Quaker town, certainly heavily involved in abolition movement and the Underground Railroad. One of the symbols is that symbolized North Star on the right side of the screen, as well as the Centennial Bell on the kind of middle portion. So just a rough sort of illustration of what of the concept that we were thinking about inside these roundabouts, courtesy of Linda and her designer that had put these together. So I wanted to give you guys an idea of that. They would be internally lit, so they really would kind of shine out of the interior. We have worked with NDOT to get these crash rated with anchor bolts that would be breakable in the event someone drove into the center of the roundabout, which unfortunately does happen from time to time, as we've found out over the years. So how the heck are we going to move a big green building? Well, the plan is we are going to do it in two phases. So the kind of red area that's outlined there on the southeast corner of Union and 32 is the green building. The plan is to move that due east to the old BMO Harris site temporarily. That would allow for all the overhead utilities that would be in conflict with a move to the north to be buried underground as part of the relocation plan, which would clear the way then for that building to move north up Union Street to its final location, 214 North Union, which is a parcel west of City Hall and south of the Westfield Playhouse that's outlined there in the blue box at the top of the screen. Who in the world would do this work? Well, Wolf Housing and Building Movers responded to our request for quotes. They are a company that is well-versed in moving historic structures. I just picked out a couple of samples from their marketing brochure to give you an idea of some of the work that they do in their company's history. Certainly larger, heavier, and more complicated buildings than our green building here in Westfield. They are very confident in their abilities to move that building. And in my coordination with them, I have a lot of confidence in them as well. So very impressive work that they do. It's certainly going to be quite an event when we do move this building in Westfield. So on to streetscape. I mentioned there are streetscape items in the plans. Just as a reminder, we had convened a streetscape committee comprised of several residents and stakeholders to kind of select some of the things we wanted to do in our 32 corridor. We wanted to take the opportunity with this construction to really beautify and revitalize our downtown area. We certainly expect continued redevelopment in the downtown. We want to take the opportunity for construction to really help show off some of those aesthetics that we could include with the contract. So we've got the street lighting, the double armed median lights in the middle within that planting median. We've also got some pedestrian lighting on the outside in those planter areas. with the ability to hang additional plantings as well as banners. I know our Chamber of Commerce was very interested in having a banner option to promote events in the city, and certainly Westfield Welcome would like that opportunity as well. So it kind of gives you a sense of what the typical section will look like with our streetscape items. And again, some additional just kind of sketches. We've got some benching along the planted areas. And then I think a really cool feature that MKSK came up with was some really unique street signage in the median there that you can see at the upper right of that slide. And here's a representation actually within the plan set. So this is an area I just picked kind of at random. It's just east of Union Street along 32. You've got brick pavers really accentuating the pedestrian walkways. You've got the planting section between the curb and the pathways, as well as benches. We've got bike racks and a couple different kinds of benches as well to allow for a really nice pedestrian walkway there along 32. So you're probably wondering, why aren't we in construction already? Well, this is, I would argue, as much a utility relocation project as it is a road construction project. There are 11 utilities that will be relocating as part of this project, and that is a substantial effort, especially in a limited urban space that we have on the 32 corridor. So Citizens Gas, Citizens Water, Citizens Sanitary Sewer, Duke as the electric utility provider, 6 communication companies that are going to be going in a joint duct along the south side of 32, and then 1 additional communication company, Frontier, that is not participating in the joint duct, are all relocating in advance of construction for this project. Okay, 11 utilities, how hard can it be? Well, here is a plan sheet showing all the utilities, all the colored lines are representative of a utility. This is at Union and 32. It is a combination of some existing utilities that will be retired with the relocation, as well as solid lines showing those relocation locations. So it is a real effort to get 11 utilities to manage the relocation, to double check, to make sure that they're not in conflict with each other, for one, and correct, and so that they're not in conflict with each other, but also, very importantly, that they're not in conflict with the construction work that we need to do for the road construction. So storm sewer work that would be part of the construction, we need to make sure that all those underground utilities are at a correct elevation to not be in conflict with storm pipes and so forth. It is quite a task. So we have been working through that over the last 6 months, and you will see a lot of relocation work starting here in probably the next month or so into 2024 as these utilities relocate in advance of construction. It is going to look very much like road construction out there. There's going to be equipment out there that utility companies are using to relocate. And so it's going to look like a construction site. It is actually not part of the road construction per se, but it is an important aspect to get these utilities relocated out of the way so that our contractor can come in and work in a timely and efficient fashion. So. Lastly, I just want to mention 32connects.com. That is our project website that the city has created. If you or your constituents have questions about the project, please direct them to 32 Connects to sign up for updates. We will continue to build out this website and update it as we are able to with the project. So with that said, I'm sure that there will be plenty of questions. Happy to answer those at this time.
Thanks, Jonathan. Councilor, questions?
What was the final cost to move Erica's?
So the quote from Wolf was for $95,250. That is only inclusive of the move itself, so physically moving the structure. There will be additional costs in constructing a foundation, getting the rehab work done on the building once we move it to that location. And the city will own that. We already own the parcel. We will own the building as well. So there's opportunities for the rehabilitation and then a local business to potentially move into that building and operate out of it. So a very exciting opportunity for the city.
Is it going to be put on a concrete slab then, or?
It will be. It'll probably be a concrete foundation with a crawl space for various utilities and so forth that need to go under the floor, under the girders.
Do we need any special kind of insurance or something to be able to do this project? With moving?
To move the building?
Yeah.
So as part of the RFQ, Wolf does have insurance for their activities that are part of our general cost of, contract for goods and services. So they have liability insurance and they insure the building with the move. The nice thing about it is a stick construction, for lack of a better term. It's 2x4s. There's a lot more give and flexibility in a structure like that as opposed to a masonry building where you have to brace some of those walls for the move. So Wolf certainly felt like this was a pretty straightforward move. I don't see any concerns about damage to the building necessarily.
Do we know what the site costs are going to be to prepare our parcel? And is NDOT participating?
NDOT is participating, yeah. They're participating 50-50 like they have with everything in this project that is project critical. And as far as site costs go, we do have a consultant on board to help us with some of the rehab and the site plan. I do not have a cost estimate finalized for that, but I'd be happy to share one here in the next month or so once we get a little further into it. We're going to include, importantly, a parking lot. I think we'll get 7 or 8 parking spaces on that site to help us in parking. There will be site work that is included in that to really make sure that this is a functional building that a business wants to move into. I think we'd be kind of foolish to not go to those costs to make sure that we've got a nice site with a building that is ready for a business to occupy it.
Total cost of the project, do you have an idea where we're at now?
Yeah, I know I've mentioned this before. With us coming up on a bid, what I'll say is that the construction estimates are substantially the same as what I've told you about in previous presentations. The important part is that this is a publicly bid process. So how a publicly bid project works, we have an engineer's estimate that is confidential to the contractors that are trying to bid on the project. They, 5 to 10, however many contractors we get to bid on the project, will submit their lowest and best bid. Without the knowledge of the engineer's estimate, we open those bids, we read them out loud, and then we also will announce the engineer's estimate. The idea is that those bids are lower than the engineer's estimate so that it actually is awardable. But the point I want to make is that announcing exactly what the engineer's estimate is really counterproductive to a public bid process. We don't want to give that away to contractors that may be bidding on it. That said, I think construction estimates and cost estimates are substantially the same as what I've reported previously.
Okay, we're still looking at a 50-50 split within that.
That's correct.
Okay, and the streetscape portion of it, I think we had an estimate of roughly 2.8 million.
Yeah, and that is roughly the same as well. We have pared down a few things here, really concentrated the pavers in the pedestrian areas around that 32 and Union intersection and a block or so in each direction to kind of show that that is the main crossroads of our downtown. But yeah, the construction estimate on the streetscape items is substantially the same. I will point out that NDOT is not participating 50-50 in those streetscape items. I think you all are aware of that, but I just wanted to remind everyone that that's the case.
The only other comment that I would make is I'd like to thank you and your efforts the efforts of everyone in the administration, the city, working within that to add those 3 crosswalks to the project. I think one of my biggest concerns personally was to make sure we have a walkable city. And by adding those crosswalks, I think we're going to accomplish a couple of different things. When we're going to slow down traffic a little bit, we're going to have some easy access points across the street. So I appreciate your efforts to make that happen, Jonathan. I know you worked hard.
I appreciate that. And that's a perfect example of how public involvement can really help improve designs. As engineers, we have a pretty good idea of what we want to put in there, but then we get feedback from the public. And that was an example of additions to a design that really make it better because of input from the public that we received in the process.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, councilors? Hearing none. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate that. Was a great presentation. Okay, next presentation was a non-DLGF report by John Rogers. And I don't see John here this evening.
I apologize. For the record, Jeremy Lawler with the city. John couldn't make it this evening. I know that we were intending to get this report to you prior to the meeting. Through some diligent efforts from Marla, we are working to get the report exported and cleaned up from the new budget software, which is in Business Central, formerly NAV. We have not gotten that done yet, and I do want to praise Marla. She's been working really hard on that in amongst all the other things that she does. So knowing that it doesn't require any action, we will get that report and we'll get it out to you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have once we have it. And at the very least, you can discuss it or it can be presented at the final meeting.
Okay, so do you think we'll see it this week, Jeremy? Is that your thought?
I will defer that to Marla. I know she's going to certainly try.
All right.
The biggest part is we wanted to make sure everything, not just the DLGF part, which I know that's the part you really haven't seen, but in doing it, I've divided it out. So it has DLGF, all the revenues, and the non-DLGF. And I really want the DLGF part to match to the penny. We're missing a couple of revenue estimates. And then the non-DLGF, just need to work with Jeremy and get a couple spaces filled in. And because it was new software, the way it's been divvied up, each department head has been responsible to enter their portion of the budget. And there have been some minor errors made, whether it's just miskeying things or a misunderstanding of, hey, you needed to do the approved budget, not your original budget estimate. So we're going through that, and we're really close, but I only knew I really needed to help on Wednesday, so I apologize, but 4 days hasn't been enough to get it done. So I definitely will have it, certainly by your next meeting. And hopefully before that, can get it to Jeremy for approval and then you guys.
And for what it's worth, this change in our budgeting process will, for the future, should make things much more seamless, all in one place. So our live budgets and our proposed budgets will all exist in our financial system of record, which has not been the case in the past.
I think we appreciate the update, Jeremy, and we would like to review it, and we are going to have a meeting at the end of the month. So, I mean, if we get a chance to review it quickly and at least have a quick discussion of it. I am disappointed personally that John Rogers didn't call me to let me know. We did give him 8 weeks, 2 months to respond back, and we asked that he respond by December 4th, and basically crickets. So that's disheartening. But I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's something we'll want to share with the new council and the new mayor when he comes from the office. I think it's important, and we need to know what our total revenues are, expenses, and take a look at that. So appreciate your coming and appearing before us this evening.
Yes, no problem. We'll get it to you just as soon as possible.
Thank you. Moving ahead, then, we've got a last report on the RDC year-end report from Linda Naz.
Good evening, Council. I don't believe Bob was able to get back into town for this meeting, so I will present this on behalf of both of us. So for the RDC, we had 2 meetings this quarter so far. We had an October 16th, I don't have anything to show you, but October 16th and November 25th. So I just wanted to quickly tell you what happened in those meetings and a lot of the usual things. We had all commissioners present in October. Mike Steele, the non-voting school member, absent. Jeremy was absent from that one. Minutes, claims. The claims, there were 2 payments for legal to Taft from account 305 Grand Junction TIF for the part for the Grand Park Committee, who's working on the agreement out at Grand Park. And the lesser amount was for the Front Street allocation area. We unanimously approved Grand Park user agreements, 33 of them. That's a good number. Presented by Matt Trinian. And 2 sponsorships, West Fork Whiskey and Minor Chores, a smaller one. Those are all attached to the agenda, so if you want the detail on these, you can really go to the agenda and you can read all these agreements if you'd like, because we do that. It's a lot of pages, but they're very similar. Resolution 07-2023 was approving the lease agreement and holding the public hearing for the, resolution for this lease agreement down at Grand Junction where we had to pay off the bands, and now we will have a new debt on that. That work has, the resolution passed 4-1, and Jim Crawford was there, and he did add, before I think it even got to you as a council, he added a map to that resolution, so not only do you see a legal description, which as he said was a little sketchy and a little shortened, but then there's a map so you can see exactly what parcels are included in that project. So that was approved. There was a public hearing. There were no comments, so it went through and then it went on to you all. There was the Q3 Grand Park report, which is done by Matt Trinian, the director, William Knox of Legacy Sports, and Blake Hibbler of Bullpen. That, again, is attached to the agenda. It was a very good report. Lots of numbers, lots of figures, lots of talking about projections. There's lots going out at Grand Park, and things that are moving forward. We're getting better. Hotel revenues are coming in sooner, and we're seeing more use of Westfield hotels for the Grand Park events, which is good. They did some front landscape improvements in front of the GPEC building. They've put some money into full power, so we don't work off of generators out of there. So there's just lots of things going on and being improved, keeping within the budgets and the money that we have. There will be a year-end report coming, probably in January. We're near the end of this first quarter, so I don't want to spend too much time, but if you want to read or listen, you can go to YouTube and listen to what the three guys said, because they did a very good presentation. They're very excited about what's going on. Something new that's happening in RDC is, for the first time, first year, we are investing Grand TIF monies. I shouldn't say Grand Junction TIF monies because it's all the TIFs. So over time, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about numbers in a few minutes, but over all the years we've had TIFs, which was, first revenues came in 2007, and it has been growing, but we've never invested those monies. It's been millions of dollars. So this year, the RDC, we talked about it, everyone agreed we need to do this. Marla, on behalf of the CT office, gave a report on that at the October meeting. So later in the year, after we got the June monies in, she looked at all that. She worked with consultants. She talked to everyone, talked to the administration, and invested like $14 million. So we have some income there that we've never had before. We've just had that money sitting in accounts. So we were excited about that at the RDC. November 20th meeting, Grand Park User Agreements 19, we approved all those. We had the 3132 investors update and request for an extension on that. That's the 3132 Grand Millennium Project. They were able to pay the total fee to the RDC, which is a total of $600,000. That will now all be paid off, and that was a good thing. Birch Dalton is the manager of that. The Grand Park Fields lighting agreement was presented by Matt. We approved that 4-0, and the lawyers will look over that agreement, make sure everything was in there and the dates were right and all. But that is where there was an agreement to put lights on 4 additional diamonds, which will allow for 300 more games a year. And if you wonder who's paying for the electricity, it's Bullpen through the fees for the field. So it's not an expense for Grand Park per se. And that should have gone out already, I think, that agreement, right? Because we were trying to get it out so we could get it all done and the construction done by April 1st. The Bullpen right of entry capital improvement agreement, we approved that 4-0. That was an agreement for turf replacements. We have to give them permission to go in and do that. Part of that will be paid out of the escrow fund of $275,000, and that'll be completed before April 1st. So now it seems like things slow down for Grand Park, but they're out there just doing a lot of things, and they do a very good job of reporting to us what those are. I wanted to talk a little bit about, just recently we added 2 more debts in October and November. You're aware of these. The Front Street EDA for $9.9 million for infrastructure to be paid off using TIF funds. This one is set up in October. This is the highest interest rate we've ever had to pay on a debt, 8%. That was the highest we could have paid. So it will be paid off in 2048. If we make all the payments to the end, $22,737,000. So a little bit of a shocker. We haven't had to experience that before, but you're all probably familiar with what's going on in the world of interest. The Redevelopment Authority lease rental revenue bonds, Series 2023, those were finalized on November 21st for just over $29 million. We did use $5.5 million out of TIF funds to pay down the bands, which were, the total was like 35 million. So when it all went together with fees and all, we paid that down with excess TIF funds, 2.3 out of the Grand Junction, 2 million out of Eagletown, and 1.2 out of Main Street. So that made our debt just over 29 million. We're paying just over $2,400,000 a year, excuse me, on that. And that will start next year. That one's at 5% interest. And that is rated at a AA negative with S&P. Effort was put together to get an S&P rating. It's AA negative, as opposed to the city's 6 million GO, which is AA plus. You can look those up anytime. Of course, they can change. It's S&P. I wanted to talk just briefly about TIF balances. So because we did a lot with money this year, we started at the beginning of the year, we had nearly $16 million, but we had already made that agreement that we're going to pay $6 million back to the city, to the infrastructure fund, for the money that was borrowed back in 2014 to complete Grand Park. We just completed that on November 30th. The second payment of $3 million was paid, so the $6 million has been paid off. In addition to that, we paid, let's see, I talked about investing monies. I talked about using the $5.5 million to pay down the Grand Junction Plaza. So we paid, $6 and $5.5, $11.5 million out of excess TIF funds. We still are ending up the end of this year with over $10 million in TIF funds. So it didn't drain us, didn't cause us a problem. But I did want to say that since getting funds in 2007 and a balance of over $1 million starting in 2012 and over $10 million in 2020, this year we invested the $14 million, and over halfway through the year we did that. We made in interest $219,897.17. You can verify this with the clerk treasurer. But also, we had to divest all that, put everything back as funds so we could pull out the right amount of monies to make these payments that I just told you about. So now the clerk treasurer's office is in communication with the administration because we need to reinvest. We have over $10 million sitting in all the TIF funds. And they were investing in $100,000 increments. So we don't want to leave interest on the table. It'd be great to get that invested again. But they have to work together closely to know what money's for cash flow, and they will do that. So the fall distributions were $4.479 million, and those we've already received. And so that's where we get the $10,148,940.18. We have pending Taft and O.W. Crone invoices for professional services and land costs for the ditch road expansion, legal price for land. The RDC has not approved a budget for 2024, so this makes it a little more difficult to estimate monies available for investment, but I'm hoping that the administration works closely with Marla, who is the clerk treasurer-elect, and they get that discussed. It'd be nice to get some of that invested before the end of the year, because it's now been sitting there for, well, not quite 2 weeks, but time is money. Another new thing coming up for RDF is that there are some new guidelines based on the changes in Indiana code done by the state legislature. There is, if you ever want to read it, there's a printed in November 2023, there is a new updated handbook for Indiana Redevelopment Commission members and their attorneys. Barnes and Thornburg does that. AIM pays for it, and that's available to anybody. But there's two kind of basic things that are interest, is that police and fire operating and capital expenditures as of January 2023, so this year, a redevelopment commission may use tax increment revenues for both operational and capital expenditures incurred with respect to police and fire services. Remember in the past, TIF never went to police or fire, you know, and that was a big point people would make. But now that is in, and they made it effective going back to January 2023. I don't know if there's any plans to do that this year yet. You all would know that because you'd have to approve it. And the second thing is an annual spending plan. This is something different and I think is exciting, is that prior to December 1st of every year, and this will start in 2024. So this is something that we really didn't do. Some other places do it, we didn't. But prior to December 1st of each year, the RDC has to prepare a spending plan for the following calendar year. So it would be going to effective in 2025. It describes planned expenditures, and it must be submitted to the mayor and the council. And then redevelopment commissions may not use their funds for any purpose other than those described in the annual spending plan. So this is a new process required by law, but it will take each individual TIF, and you have to have a plan, and that's the plan you'll put in place for the next year. I think it's kind of exciting. You have to have projects. You have to have what you're going to spend your money on. And I think that'll kind of give an outline, a basis, a format to fit into what we want to see done with our funds. And of course, everybody knows the only way to lower funds otherwise is to cut the capture. Right now, we capture 100% still on all of our TIFs, except for, I think, SEP. They capture some and we get, 20% now? I'll check that for sure. But that one is producing funds now too. If you want to see what money is in each account, you can look at the fund report, which Clerk Treasurer puts out every month. Shows you what's in each TIF fund. And they've done a very good job of moving the money out into the interest-bearing accounts and then putting it back in, getting the bills paid. Any other questions? I think I've taken long enough. Lots going on. So it's good to see the RDCs should be more and more effective going forward.
Councilors, any comments, questions? Nope. Linda, before you leave, I just personally want to thank you on behalf of the City Council for all the work that you've put in, Bob's put in over the last 3 or 4 years as our representatives on the RDC. My own personal opinion has changed dramatically over this period of time. I can remember the first couple meetings that I listened to, comments made that, well, we don't need financials because we know these people and they're friends and we trust them, to a point where we are now looking at the numbers very carefully. And I would say I would thank you, because I think to a great extent that was you as a driving force was able to make some significant changes. And I'd also say that from a council standpoint, that I personally am jealous of what the new RDC going forward is going to be able to do. The idea that we can contribute TIF money to our public safety people, that is fantastic. And the idea that we're going to actually maybe have business plans. I mean, I think you call it a spending plan, I call it a business plan, where you look at the projects, and you have specific projects per different TIF areas. I think that's a huge move forward for RDCs across our state. So again, I thank you for your efforts and toward making some of those things come true.
Thank you for those kind words. I just want to say that it's, Marla will be the clerk treasurer. That makes her the treasurer of the RDC. It makes her our investment officer, and she's the clerk treasurer. So she will be a big part, and the administration working with her will make all this, happen much more easily. But I love the idea of getting money finally off our millions of dollars, because we used to end the year with 14 million sitting in a bank, or 16 million sitting in a bank, or 12. And for me, being a numbers person, I'm like, why are we leaving all that money on the table? And I know, interest rates haven't been high all along, but we've had periods of good interest rates in places where you can earn some money. So I'm excited to see that happening. for the
I agree here
RDC
too.
also. So
Thank you,
thank you
Linda.
again.
Okay, that ends our reports this evening. Moving on then to old business. First item would be ordinance 23-23, Spring Mill Center PUD amendment. This item had a council introduction on September 11th, followed by an APC hearing on October 2nd, APC workshop on November 20th. It had a favorable, unanimous favorable APC recommendation on December 4th. And I think from our Community Development Department, Weston Rogers is going to give us a quick update on this project. So,
Yep, just a brief introduction this evening. Good evening, members of the council. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is an amendment to the Spring Mill Center PUD located northeast of the intersection at State Road 32 and Spring Mill Road. This PUD amendment, excuse me, this PUD amendment proposes to modify the signage standards associated with the property. This item was introduced at the September 11th City Council meeting and received a favorable recommendation at the December 4th APC meeting. This item is available for adoption consideration this evening. The petitioner is here this evening to answer any questions you may have. They plan on saying just a few words. I'm available to answer any questions if there are any this evening. With that, that concludes the introduction.
thank you, Weston. We've got Russell Brown.
Good evening. For the record, Russell Brown, Clark Quinn Law Firm, 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. Be very brief. When we introduced this before you in September, we stated that the goal was to have a comprehensive approach to signage in this PUD. And when we went to Plan Commission, we were told that we wanted to have an equitable and responsive approach. And I would tell you that I think what's before you tonight is a market-appropriate solution that meets all of those goals. I just wanted to thank planning staff. They put a lot of work into a very comprehensive exhibit that allowed the Plan Commission to provide pretty good feedback to what we were doing. I think it will actually be helpful to future considerations as well for the Plan Commission. It was very, very well done. And I can't say that enough. So thank you to them for that. And thank you to the Plan Commission for working through the workshop process. We're thankful for a unanimous favorable recommendation and would ask for your approval of this petition, of this ordinance tonight.
Councilor, comments, questions?
I want to explain, some of the council probably doesn't know this. Community development, specifically, I believe Weston did it, came up with this great visual way for us to actually see how this plays out on the corridor in terms of the size. And they did scales of the signage that's existing and approved on the corridor and how this kind of fits in there visually. And boy, was it helpful. I mean, just an amazing thing to put together for us to be able to. Signage seems like such a small thing, but actually it's a really big thing. So to have something like that was very handy. Thanks.
I would agree. Excellent job. The visual was really pretty stunning. Did basically, I know it was like almost like a 2-3 mile visual of State Road 32 with all the various signages along that road, how high the signages were, how big they are. And it made the process really a lot easier, a lot more informative, better. So, any other comments, councilors? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2323?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve by Cindy Spaljerk, seconded by Councilor Patton. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Victor McCarty,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Cindy Spaljerik.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Moving on to ordinance 23-35 or 2024 fee schedule. This item had a council introduction on November 27th. Is up for adoption consideration this evening. And Jeremy Lawler.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Nothing has changed since introduction. Councilor Spoljarek had a few questions at introduction, and I believe I answered those and sent the the appropriate response. I have not received any questions beyond that, but I'm here this evening to answer them should you have any.
It's a little late now for me to go at it this way. I went and researched some other communities and how they approach this, and a lot of them have factored in the consumer price index and all these kind of things, and increases for when it's appropriate, and are actually charging a lot more than we are, quite frankly, from what I've seen. And so I'm hoping maybe next year we can go through and make sure that we're in line and not missing some stuff, especially I know that there's things that cost staff a lot of time in these reports, so I want to make sure we're getting paid for that.
Okay. I'm certain that they will evaluate and collect as much money as they can.
Any other comments, councilors? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 23-35?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Counselor Patton, seconded by Counselor Fry. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Cindy Spilgerik.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Moving on to new business, Resolution 23-114, creating a new Fund Number 271 for special distribution lit. This is up for adoption consideration this evening. And Jeremy, you're going to talk about this. I think it's one-time distribution.
So for Resolution 23-114, that is the establishment of a non-reverting fund. So as you all are very likely aware, the special public safety lit, so it's 1% of the lit, I believe. Marla could probably correct me on that. Anywho, it is for, specifically for dispatch services and technology that the county collects. They provide, obviously dispatch, but also any support systems we need like radios and computers. This year there was an additional amount of money that they distributed to the local communities in Hamilton County. This resolution establishes a fund so that money can be received into that fund and utilized the way it was intended per everyone's ordinances and agreement. So the following action would be then to appropriate those dollars as far as an additional appropriation to be spent by public safety. So we thought it valuable with the understanding that this may be a semi-annual reoccurring situation, that we create a fund where those monies are received and they can be allocated by council and the public safety departments.
So councilors, obviously this resolution is a resolution to create the fund. Are there any questions?
Do we have to waive any rules or anything since this is?
Well, I think
a resolution.
this is just the resolution. The next we'll have the ordinance. We'll have to waive the rules for that. Do I have a motion on the resolution 23-114?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Counselor Fry, seconded by Counselor Patton. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Cindy Spilgerik.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, the next item then is the ordinance 23-36 for additional appropriation for fire and public safety distribution into the funds that we just created, okay? This has a council introduction tonight, and I think we have received the funds, so we're going to want us, if we can, suspend the rules and move forward. So we have to take a vote to suspend the rules so that we can act upon this ordinance this evening.
Correct.
So
I'd like to make a motion that we suspend the rules so that we can take a vote on ordinance number 23-26.
Second.
motion made to suspend the rules by Scott Fry, seconded by Counselor Patton.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Cindy Spilgerik.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, and this item is going to require a public hearing, but before we do that, can you review it one more time, Jeremy?
I certainly can, and I wanted to point out one unique piece of this. It is not just specifically the $579,374 of public safety lit. This also is an additional appropriation of $42,399 for the insurance claim of the ambulance that was crashed a while back so that it can be appropriated and spent. With that, I'll entertain any questions or I'll yield to the public hearing.
Would it be okay just if I added something for clarity? Okay. Ordinarily, if we would have received insurance reimbursement in the same year, we wouldn't require an additional appropriation for that, which we just did, I think, at your last meeting. But this particular amount was received in 2022, so that's the reason it's required to have an additional appropriation.
Okay, understand. Okay, that said, this item does require a public hearing. So we'll open the public hearing at 8:51. I'm sorry, 7:51. Give it about a minute. Kevin? No calls, okay. Okay, we'll close the public hearing at 7:52. And counselors, do you have any questions or comments?
One question. It says they'll be used for any appropriate purpose as more particularly outlined in Resolution 23114, but it's not really laid out in 23114. So I didn't know, what is the plan for these funds?
It is, and the resolution references a statute, the PSAP statute outlines exactly what the prohibitions are.
Okay, it lays out the prohibitions, but doesn't actually say how we're intending to use that. I guess that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, that is open to the council about how to use those within those guidelines and the laws created by statute. So it has to be used for public safety purposes, and it can't be used for certain things listed in the statute, but you have latitude otherwise. And so we didn't feel it appropriate to specify here what the need might be, given that, you know, chiefs and Mayor like Willis might have different uses or different funding mechanisms for certain of those.
Given that it'd be both police and fire, is there gonna be a knockdown drag out here, and who's getting the money, what they're using it for? No? I'm seeing head shaking, so it sounds like you guys have the plan?
So I can allude to a little bit of what the plan for this year is, specifically this additional appropriation. There were some significant costs associated with getting fiber connectivity to the new fire station that were not part of that bid project, as well as some communication infrastructure inside the building. These dollars are going to go to reimburse, not all of them, but what we're spending this year is going to go to reimburse the fire equipment line, as well as the IT equipment line that were both utilized to cover that gap. And then in the future, hopefully they all play nice and can decide on a mutually beneficial way to spend the dollars.
Other comments, questions? Okay. Do I have a motion then to approve ordinance 2336?
I move to approve ordinance 36.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Fry, seconded by Counselor Patton. Marlo, would you call the roll, please?
Cindy Spoljarek.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Our next item is 23-115, the City of Westfield encumbering certain funds for services and authorizing the clerk treasurer to encumber such funds. This item is up for adoption consideration this evening. Marla, Jeremy, you're going to fill us in?
Yeah, I'll take it, and then I can let Marla answer any more specific questions that you may have. But this is our annual exercise of encumbering funds from the 2023 budget for projects that could span calendar years. So unspent funds in 2023 that would be appropriated for 2024 for existing and known projects that would otherwise not impact the 2024 budget. There's a listing there on the screen. The majority is public works associated with infrastructure projects. IT has a $60,000 expense for actually the dollars that were approved for appropriation. Chris is going to go do some projects, a project that he otherwise wasn't going to be able to without the public safety lit dollars being reimbursed. And then the police design is an ongoing project that you all have been aware of. So that's spending for the design, development, and construction documentation phases that are upcoming in '24, and the economic development office build-out and furniture project is still ongoing. Happy to answer any questions.
Counselors, you have questions?
Before you move, I was just explaining to Mr. Hersig, I neglected to remove the IT computer equipment line for $60,000. I received an email from Chris later in the day today that he said it turns out he won't be needing the encumbrance. So if you are inclined to make a motion to approve this, if you could just amend that by removing that line. Luckily, we just don't need it.
Okay. And have all of these items been encumbered properly?
Yeah, encumbrances require both a PO and a vendor, and so while I don't actually have them all in my possession, it's been emailed back and forth today, make sure that you have it. So I have those assurances that I'll have that information so that we can detail it in NAV with that. There's actually a drop-down for encumbrance, so we'll make sure that's there, and then that's added in to the budget, which is the other piece that we'll be working on when we roll everything up for you.
Okay, perfect.
While we're making an amendment, I also noticed an error on the numbers. So the Simon Moon Park construction number should actually be 1 million even. The 750,000 should be the Freedom Trails playground construction. And then the 400,000 is correct for the Simon Moon expansion, PECE. So just to reiterate, this $750,000 line should be 1 million. This $400,000 line should be 750,000. Looks like a
Can we
cell.
clean this up and do it at the next meeting? Or is that?
Yeah, I think
I
we
just
can,
wanted to call your attention to it.
we can
If
do
that's
that too.
three lines that are messed up.
If that was my error, I apologize. I don't recall seeing that in the email, but yeah, I'm happy to redo
Is
it.
that okay?
Oh,
If there's three
absolutely.
lines, it's
I mean,
probably
it is
best.
for me. Hopefully it's okay
Yeah,
with everybody
it's
else.
perfectly fine as long as
Perfect.
Marla's happy.
I agree.
Okay, good. We are going to have a second meeting in December, it'll be on the 27th, so this will be a quick item to address with the numbers in there.
So table to next meeting,
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Do we need to vote to table it? Okay,
in the minutes.
excellent. All right then, moving on to Resolution 23-116, approving the termination agreement with the DWA. This resolution is up for adoption consideration this evening, and Councilor Willis is going to fill us in on this particular resolution.
Wasn't ready for that one.
Oh, well.
So, yeah, we have some contracts, sorry about that. We have some contracts that are no longer needed. Quite frankly, we are no longer in possession of the property. Those contracts need to be terminated. And then we're also going to shelf, and I think this is probably the next one, but we're going to be shelving a couple of properties until next year. But I think there was 4 listed initially on the agreement, and 2 of those we no longer have.
Okay. So this first resolution then, as I understand it, is terminating the agreement that dates back from 2010 between the city and what used to be the Downtown Westfield Neighborhood Association. Ann, would you have anything to add to this?
So this first one is an old agreement, as you said, and it was for DWNA to provide services and you to pay a sum of money. They have not been providing those services. You have not been paying the money. This needs to be terminated. They agree. So this one is just cleanup. The next one is what Scott's describing about cleaning up the leases because some of the properties don't exist at this time. But this one is just flat cleanup. They've not been providing the services. You've not been paying the money. This is just hanging out there, and this is just terminating it so that it's clear.
And moving forward, somebody from the city staff will be managing those properties and the contracts and the leases and all of that kind of stuff moving forward. So that will not be something we'll be leaning on the DWA for.
Counselor, any questions?
Move to approve Resolution 22-116, terminating our agreement with the DWA.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Second made. The motion has been made by Counselor Fry, seconded by Counselor Patton. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
I heard 22. Just can you say it clearly so I can write it down that way? And if it's my error, I apologize. I thought you said
I
22.
apologize, I may have 23-116.
Thank you. Okay. Troy Patton.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Cindy Spolcherik.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. The next item is Resolution 23-118. It's approving amended and restated commercial lease with the DWA. This is up for adoption consideration this evening. I think, Ann, could you give us an overview of this and then we can fill in?
So this one does 2 things in substantial part. One, it amends the lease to take off properties that the city no longer has. And number 2, it cuts down the term and it allows for shorter terms. This will go 6 months at a time so that next year, as Councilman Willis suggested, when the time is right, it can easily and more readily be terminated for the city to take these over and manage it.
Thank you. Counselor Willis, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Ann covered it well.
Counselor, questions?
I kind of have a number of questions. I didn't know, for the Camilla Court and Penn Street buildings, which are the, as I understand, the current ones that are being leased, I don't know what their current lease terms are when those expire. Does anyone know that? Anyone?
I don't think we reviewed that, did we, Ann?
I'm sorry.
I don't think we reviewed that in our meeting, did we?
No, what
I
the
don't remember
current
going
lease
through
terms
that.
are.
I mean, we have current leases on them. I don't know when they expire.
That's correct. But at the end of the lease, should you terminate it, then those leases have to be transferred to the city.
Okay, because this
Or
says
assigned.
this starts basically January 1st, 2024 with these agreements, if I understand this correctly. And so I'm confused because I don't understand what their current terms are and if we'd be in trouble legally if we're not officially breaking a lease because they entered into it with the DWA. Do you know what I mean? So just legally, I'm wanting to make sure that our bases are covered so we don't wind up in a situation.
So you're leasing them to DWA or you were to DWNA, and they're essentially subleasing them, but they're managing them for you. So you're changing your agreement with DWA. And so you're not changing the terms with the tenants at all. And in fact, it won't change the terms with the tenants. They will continue. That was part of our discussions with DWA and why they were willing to do this, because the tenants' terms will continue. And 6 months into next year, if the city decides that they're ready to take these over, then the leases that are in existence with the tenants will just simply be assigned to the city to manage at that point in time.
Okay. Right now, it's saying that the tenant shall pay to the landlord rent of $100 per year during the lease term.
Right. DWA is paying you that much.
But DWA is going to be out of this. That's where I'm confused, and maybe I'm just thick and I'm not getting it, but.
No. DWA is handling DWA is your tenant. They're taking over these leases. They're providing and making sure that they're properly managed and that they're insured and that they're taken care of. They have their own tenants that they're putting in there.
So we're still going to have the DWA involved in this whole thing. Is that what I'm understanding? No, they're completely out. So they would be leasing these directly from the city.
I'm sorry, you were looking at Scott when you said that. DWA is going to be involved for a short period of time.
Till my staff comes in place, that is correct, yeah. But once that happens, and we're getting in the weeds here, we're talking a restructuring with somebody that's not even on my staff right now, or in the city staff. So there's some changes that's gonna happen. It's gonna create a new position that's gonna manage the city's facilities moving forward, and that person will manage the contract. And that is when we'll terminate officially that agreement with DWA, as far as I remember our conversation. Mike, am I missing that, or? I know it's been a while.
For clarity, what you just said, Councilor Willis, that's when we'll terminate that agreement with DWA, meaning this one that we're about to approve.
That's the way I understood it, yes.
Yes.
And it's going to happen very quickly in the 2024. It's just not something that's been announced yet.
So to me, it feels like we just terminated one agreement, but we're getting ready to kind of backfill that with a similar agreement that you'll handle under your new administration.
From the way I understand it, the leases aren't changing with the user of the space. We are just going to assume control of managing those properties moving forward. We're not going to work through DWA. We're removing DWA from all subleasing and managing of the city properties.
Well, again, what's this $100 rent for a year? I'm confused by this. That's not what they're currently paying. I don't know the exact amount, but I know it's not $100 a year.
You're not removing them yet, but they're now on a shorter term lease so that when you do remove them, when the new administration is ready to remove them, you don't have to wait for a whole term of the lease to expire. You don't have to wait a whole year. You can terminate them and they're only guaranteed 6 months at this point in time.
But they continue paying their current amount that they have been paying. That's what I think I'm just not getting it today.
DWA hasn't paid us anything.
Okay, the way I understand it is that, first of all, we've canceled the overall contract with the DWA. That becomes null and void. So any agreement to pay X number of dollars to them for goodwill or to help them for a year to get up and running that was put in place back in 2010 as an incentive to help them and the chamber grow is now void because they're up and running. They're doing a wonderful job. They don't need that support any longer. Because of our last action. Okay, because of the last action. Okay, so now we get into the fact that they are currently, where they were managing 4 properties, they're now managing 2 properties. So in order to smooth that out, you know, with the idea that the new administration is going to be addressing all city-owned properties, and they're going to be hiring somebody to manage those properties. They don't have that person in place yet. So what we wanted to do was just, and we negotiated, continuing this process as it currently is for the next 6 months, and then after that, upon 60-day notice, the administration can terminate it and move everything over. So for the next 6 months, the lease revenues from these subleases would continue to flow to the Chamber of Commerce.
This was an attempt to clean it up. Well, we can leave it as is, and we're gonna deal with it next year anyways. But I was under the impression this council wanted to deal with how this was being managed. And I think this is the resolution to ensure that happens.
It's certainly not a clean break that I had hoped for initially, that's for sure. But it was a negotiated settlement that got us out of any political or any potential legal issues with respect to the old agreement that was hanging out there for all these years, unenforced by either party and unfollowed, but certainly has some legal implications to it. And so we kind of negotiated this. And I trust Councilor Willis has a plan in place and went with that.
So I like the way you said that, Councilor Johns, President Johns. We're looking for a clean break. I think that's what I was looking for. I understand there's probably a plan in place, but I know I certainly was looking for a clean break. I appreciate the way you phrased that.
If you're comfortable with this and this is how you want to move forward, then I can be on board with it.
I'm comfortable with that. I'm just not prepared to, I don't have anybody on staff right now that can manage these. I mean, I could throw it to somebody, but is that really how we want to handle it? We want to be thoughtful in what we're doing. We're going to have this new position of Director of Facilities in Grand Park. Obviously, Grand Park's getting ready to go through a huge transition. We're going to be bringing in a new person that's going to, we've done some reshuffling in other departments that, and got people in the room who don't know all this yet, but it's coming. It's not going to affect anybody on the staff, but we're going to bring in a new head count and shuffle some things around to address the vacuum created by Grand Park and to clean up some of these issues we've had with properties and how they're managed and things like that.
Is this like a first quarter initiative?
It's going to be January. We just have not made any announcements yet.
So then is it worth it? So we have a clean break coming in January. So the question is, do we want to do this and then the next council will perform the clean break, or just leave it as is until January, right? I mean,
that's up to you guys. I'm
Or
fine.
vote no
with
and let them deal with it in
whether-
January. That's a clean break.
I'm committed to doing what we're talking about. It's something I've wanted to see change for a while as well. So we're all on the same sheet of music. It's just how you guys want to deal with it. You have my word, and there are many city councilors that are coming in, are in here as well. We're going to fix this. I don't like the way it is either.
So I would encourage us to go ahead and make that clean break. And then the new administration will handle it moving forward.
You're saying accept this and then, but this isn't, I mean, it's not a clean break because they still have to manage the properties until they're set up under Scott's administration is what he's saying.
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
Yeah, so if you're asking me, we just ended the old contract from 2010. We just ended that, and now we're being asked to vote on a new one, even though it's temporary and it's very short term. My opinion is we say no to that, and that's not in place. And then in January, the new administration will handle it by putting something new in place.
So what happens between now and January, whatever?
I would default that to Ann because I think this is something that Ann felt we needed to do.
If I may. You terminated the first agreement because they weren't providing the services. That's easy for them to agree to, that they don't object to you terminating it. This is an amendment to a lease where they are providing the services. They will agree to this amendment, even though it gives them much shorter terms. It doesn't necessarily equate that you can just terminate it whenever you want to next year, and they'll agree to that. that's a different issue.
So they may not even agree to do, Scott, what you're wanting to do.
No, they've agreed. We had a meeting with Mike John, or Counselor Johns, myself, Dan Moyer, and we all hashed this out, and I think we were all in agreement that this is the direction we were going.
Are they gonna be returning money then from the DWA that was collected, that was supposedly held back to fix things? And
We didn't go down that rabbit hole, to be honest with you.
I mean, not to bring up, I'm okay with it, I don't really care either way, but I'm gonna point out one thing that, you know, I mean, I asked Kurt Weitzel and Dan Moyer, let's see, I'm gonna say this probably now for what, the third year straight, we still haven't seen any financial statements, we still don't know how much they were holding back to, remember, if you remember, they said, the one place might need a new air conditioner or whatever, and that they were holding back funds for all those things, and yet, we're still waiting on those. I mean, I don't see Kurt Weitzel and Dan Moyer here, you know, they used to come every once in a while, but now, I mean, we can't seem to get them to be accountable and transparent. What's gonna make them be that way, you know, next year?
Well, and we're gonna fix that by we're taking back control of it.
Are you gonna get the money back then also?
Again, we're clean breaking it, we're gonna
Yeah.
start fresh, and we're not going back and trying to hash out what was done before and what wasn't done before. We're just gonna start fresh, the city's taking back the properties, and we'll move forward from there.
So I have another question, Ann. So what we just voted on was the termination agreement with DWNA about services. Scott, you're talking about Counselor Fry, we're talking about clean break termination with DWA about these two properties. So what was terminated was not, that's not even up for vote tonight anyway, what you're talking about, Scott.
Correct. They're
Okay,
two different
just to
pieces.
clarify.
They're two different pieces.
Yeah, I think really the issue to me is that you terminate the one agreement, it's gone, but the other leases are in place, and DWA has been subletting these places. They have leases in place. They have agreed through a negotiation to be willing to give those leases up come after 6 months with our request to do that at that point. Councilor Willis has committed to do that at that point in time, and it just seems to me that it's more prudent just to kind of work with them and come to an agreement.
Again, I'm okay with it. I just want to point out one more thing, Scott, is that if you remember, Dan Moyer and Steve Latour said that they spent $120,000 of our dollars on, or they were in the process of spending $120,000 of these monies that they've been receiving, from this and other things for the renderings of downtown. If that's not going to happen, maybe they'd like to return that money, you know, back to the city. Because that was, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, 6 to 9 months ago, I think that happened, and they were like, yeah, we're going to present it, and they never presented it. I mean, you remember that?
Yeah, but my administration has picked that up, and we're working with MKSK on that redesign. And we've started to unveil some of the stuff from that. We took it from where it was, we made some changes to it, we remassaged it, and it's going to be released.
Yeah.
But if you remember right, we did not participate. We
Right.
pushed that back to Steve Latour and Dan Moyer for them to fund that. So we have no skin in that game right now.
No, they did it on their own, Scott, remember?
They did,
They
that's
didn't even
right.
ask us.
That's right. So this isn't, we're not in a position we can demand anything, but I will say I've been working very closely with them. I have shared the plans with the new city council coming in. They've had a chance to digest it and weigh in. I have rolled it out during a town hall meeting to the community. We haven't done a full blitz on it yet, but we're gonna do that first quarter of next year. So that's not wasted money, and that stuff has been ongoing. I think during the political season, they just stopped and waited until after the next mayor and council was approved, and I thought that was probably the prudent thing to do.
Yeah. Again, I'm fine with it, I'm just wanting to point that out, that, I mean, there's a lot of promises made that none of them ever came through, yeah.
I'm just interested in starting on a clean slate, to
Okay.
be honest with you.
Any other comments, questions? Do I have a motion regarding Resolution 23-118, approving to amend and restate the commercial leases, DWA?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion made to approve, Counselor Willis, seconded by Counselor by Victor. Counselor Victor.
Scott Willis,
Counselor McCarty.
Yes.
Victor McCarty,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
No.
Cindy Spiljarek,
No.
Jake Gilbert,
No.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-3.
Our next item is Resolution 23-117, adopting Indiana Code 5-23, authorizing the release and request of a request for proposals / qualifications under Indiana Code 523 and taking certain other actions related thereto. This item is up for adoption and consideration this evening.
Good evening, you all. Thank you very much. Again, Jeremy Lawler with the city. So in order to enter into a contract for construction services using the construction methodology of build, operate, transfer, more commonly known as BOT, state statute, specifically Indiana Code 5-23, requires that council passes a resolution allowing that construction methodology to be used. So as you are likely aware, that the police headquarters is intended to be built in that method, and we have identified that most likely the Station 84 project would be as well. So this resolution would allow, doesn't require, but it allows the city to utilize this construction method for anything moving forward.
And if I could just add to that, the library is using BOT, where I think we're the first entity to go down that path in the city of Westfield. And the advantage to a build, operate, transfer is they set what they call a GMP, excuse me, guaranteed manufactured price?
Max price.
Thank you, max price. And it sets the bars so that you don't have cost overage on your projects like we've had in the past in Westfield. So I'm a big fan of BOT. I think it's highly effective. It keeps your costs under control and makes sure you're delivering your projects on, at least on budget, if not under budget.
Additionally, it allows the development and construction management team to come on board during the design process so that you have two separate entities working together to value engineer along the way, troubleshoot design problems. I don't want to offend John Nail, but engineers don't always get the design correctly. A construction company is then helping along the way. So it delivers a better and more secure price at the end that they are guaranteeing, meaning unless it's unforeseen subgrade type things, it's a guaranteed price, and change orders aren't generally an option.
Jeremy mentioned it, but it's worth underscoring. This doesn't obligate the city to do this. It's just a foundational resolution that allows the city to do it if it's advantageous at any time in the future. So from this, if you approve it from this point forward. But it doesn't obligate the city to anything.
Just a quick comment. I mean, I actually kind of like the idea, but I will tell you that the way that was done on the library was actually a backdoor process, and it was actually not followed very well. So for that reason, I'm going to vote no. Not that I do think it can work. The problem is that when you agree to have people come in and speak at the library, these people are going to come in and speak, and they didn't allow one of the people to come in and speak and explain their process. And they went with basically someone who was more politically connected, and that's wrong. And so for that reason, I'm going to vote no. But I do agree that it can be used effectively, but it can also clearly be used improperly.
I can't speak to the library. I can tell you how we selected our partner for the police headquarters, which actually has been selected and have been working free of charge for several months. But we are now to the point where they're going to be engaged in delivering a guaranteed max price. But what we did was we sent out the public RFP, received, I think, 8 proposals. The selection team, which consisted of the 2 police chiefs, Rush and Jordan. I was on that, and then our, I think Mr. Willis was on it.
I didn't vote, I just sat
He
in
just
on the
listened in.
process.
Nevertheless, there were 5 of us that all listened to the select 3 for interviews and then ultimately scored and selected the project. Mr. Nail was on it as well from an engineering perspective. So it isn't one person making the selection, it's a selection committee, at least in our case. I would imagine that the police or the fire station would have the same approach.
And I would say the library went through the same process. And if you want to verify, you can go back. We public noticed every meeting because we had a quorum on the board and they were recorded. And if you have any questions about the process and the transparency, feel free to go back and watch it.
Yeah, they didn't, but that's your opinion. It's okay. I mean, yes, they had a quorum, but the process actually was broken and flawed.
Well, I don't believe you were at any of those meetings, so I
No, you're
disagree.
right. No, my wife was. And
Actually,
she's
Kim
a
was not
CPA.
either. She was
Yeah.
not on the committee, so I disagree with you.
No, I
there.
know. You guys met back door. I mean, with people.
Okay, Troy.
It's okay.
All right,
It's what happened. I mean,
okay.
so. Again, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not going to give a blanket. I personally, I'm just one of 7. I'm not going to vote to give a blanket resolution to allow it. And I'm not saying it's not a good process, and it can be a good process. I'm saying that, it can also be abused, clearly.
Could I get you to address section 4, please?
I'm going to have to defer that to Manny. Was there a specific question?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Section 4.
Okay.
It just says any officer of the council.
Any officer of the council and
Like
members of the
anybody
committee
can
are hereby
agree to it.
authorized to take any and all actions to execute any documents. I'm trying to wrap my mind around that, to be honest with you.
That part, so officer of the council is either the president or vice president. And throughout the process, for example, to select the BOT operator, there needs to be an agreement that would come before the council. And this just gives the council that ability, the president, vice president, to sign those documents.
But not to,
It says any and all actions. That's what, I'm a little,
No actions and execute any documents or certificates that such officers deem necessary to effect the foregoing resolutions. So it would only be tied to effectuating the BOT agreement or the process. It wouldn't be any and all related to it. It would just be to effectuate the BOT process and it moving forward. But the way it works is, for example, in Jeremy's example, there's a scoping period where they do design work, and then there's a period where they develop the GMP, and then it gets developed into a negotiated agreement that would come before this body. So there's nothing that would come during the regular process, Councilor Patton. There was nothing that could come and be effective under this process that wouldn't come before the council for approval and execution.
And if I could add a little bit to that, one other benefit of BOT is that the city then holds a single contract. The developer construction management company holds all the rest of them. So when the council approves the single contract that would go into the BOT, there's not really any other actions that we would be signing for. That is our commitment to the GMP. The rest is held by the rest of the risk is held by
Right.
the developer construction management company.
Yep. So all the city's work is done on the front end, and once the GMP is established and you enter into the BOT agreement, then it's up to them to deliver or not.
When you think about Grand Junction, some of the overages we had, if that would have been a
That would
bond,
not be
that would
possible.
not have happened.
Not be
That's right.
possible.
That would not have happened. This is a solution to solve some problems that we've had and experienced in Westfield, so.
Yeah, and in the Grand Junction example, we had a GMP in that project too through the CMC, where we fell short and ended up with estimates that were bid much higher than what they were estimated, is because we did not have a contractor on board until at the end of design. Design was complete. It was the traditional design bid build project, which is what it was supposed to be. We elected to go to CMC. They then took the design plans, went out and bid them. That's where the overage came in. We had to negotiate to a new GMP, but if you recall, after GMP, we actually came in under budget by about $700,000.
Jeremy, can't that be rectified just by the process, though?
Meaning?
You're talking about Grand Junction. Couldn't the process was broken? In fact, we sat in a finance committee meeting, myself, Scott Fry, and Joe Edwards, and Todd Bertrand. We said, hey, well, when you knew this was over, why didn't you do this? And he said, and this is the quote, that would have gone over like a lead balloon. We already knew we were over, but yet they kept going. The process was completely broke. The process of bidding, finding out, or going through the entire design, everything. Before a shovel was even moved, Todd Bertrand admitted that it was over budget, but his quote was, we didn't want to tell anybody because it would go over like a lead balloon.
So before a shovel moved, we had already value engineered and rebid the project because it was bid out prior to the GMP being issued completely to public bid.
Just a slight correction there, Councilor Patton. It was, to your point, before shovel was moved, but it was actually before the old council was asked to vote on the funding for it.
That's true. Yeah.
At the time they were requesting funding.
That's true.
They knew the project was not going to be built that way at that price. And the response was, when we asked, why didn't you tell them that? Why didn't you acknowledge that up front? To your point, because it would have gone over like a lead balloon.
So I don't recall the conversation with Todd, but I do know that I was a part of the process the entire time. We did not know the project was over budget until we got bids back in 2020, I believe. In fact, not personally, but we hired a separate appraiser or estimating company in addition to the one that was provided by the design team in an effort to verify numbers, and they were within a percent or two. That was a local construction company that did not ultimately bid the project. They proposed but were not selected. So we did everything we could to ensure that the numbers that we presented for debt issuance were in line with what we expected the cost to be. However, it went to market. Market speaks what cost actually is. It came back significantly higher, and there's a whole 2 more hours worth of details there that make that possible, but we didn't commit to debt knowing that it was going to cost more. That did not happen.
Yeah.
Ann, can you help me? My only question is, I'm still struggling with section 4, with understanding the interpretation of that. The rest of it all makes total sense to me, but the verbiage here, I'm not.
Man, is section 4 required by statute?
No.
So you could motion to approve with exception of section 4, and it can be eliminated.
It would be nice, though, to ratify the action taken so far on the police plan, because this approval of the BOT process is required before you enter into that agreement. So instead of starting over and not taking advantage of what you've done so far, that's part of what Section 4 does, is ratify Jeremy's good actions so far and
So-
the chiefs to get that done.
Even in that scenario where we have not signed any documentation or contract for services,
Well, you have for the scoping, even though you're not paying anything for it. So I don't want to.
Correct.
I don't want you to lose out on that.
yeah, understood.
And so that's part of what Ford does. And the other thing is just a catch-all in case downstream, somebody makes an issue that there wasn't a vote taken for the vice president to sign something under the BOT. You can always point back to the foundational document, which is this resolution, to say, no, that was completely authorized and valid. And you can hold the operator to account, for example, if there's an overage and the operator complains.
Yeah,
Tries to find some sort of loophole.
I'm not trying to be difficult with all this.
No, I
but
understand, it's a fair question.
Understanding that we're coming from an era of handshake agreements and things like that, I mean, I just don't want to kind of open that
Yeah, this is
Pandora's
the
box here.
complete
This is-
opposite of that. I'm telling you, it's not possible under the BOT process, because after the scoping period, leading up to the agreement, it's negotiated, and there's a GMP established, and it's approved. So this ratifies the action taken for the scoping and all the good work done for the police department, and then it authorizes the vice president or president, which are the officers, to take action downstream, so that action won't be challenged, will be able to be challenged by an operator if there's some snafu downstream, where there wasn't a motion taken to approve something by the council.
Manny,
Yes, sir.
just a question. I mean, why not just when you're bidding things out, I mean, why not just have not to exceed X? I mean, what?
Well, because you don't want to make that determination if they can do it cheaper.
Yeah,
You don't want to set the baseline if they can get to a baseline that's lower.
but can't you do that in the bidding process? I mean, without it being public?
Well, the bidding process is first to select the operator,
Right.
right? And then you work through the rest of the process in the scoping period, which is basically in a lot of instances where the operator for foundation work, for earth moving, all of that stuff, they need to use that period to be able to develop a GMP. And if the city sets it, and it sets it too high, that's the danger. That's why you don't want to do it at the RFP stage. Because you want to be able to utilize, and at any point, right now, Jeremy could go, oop, sorry, no thanks.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit of this. All this does is allow you to go down that process. At any point before you execute a full BOT agreement, you can pull out. And even under the agreement, you should have an out anyway.
Yeah, it's just like the unintended consequences of being able to say you can do this indefinitely. Yeah, I mean,
It just, yeah, all this does is give you the ability to start the process. This doesn't obligate the city in any way other than to use this method. Now, you can use this method in conjunction with another method. You could bid these together. You could do a BOT and design build together in an RFPQ, and then go down the line and pick whichever one is better. So that's all this allows you to do, is to be able to use that methodology, that procurement methodology, if it's beneficial to the city. If tomorrow Jeremy gets a call and doesn't like something on the police project, stop. If the GMP comes back and it's crazy, you can say, no thanks, thanks for all the hard work so far, but we're gonna go in a different direction.
I believe the city of Lawrence recently terminated about a year ago.
It happens all the time. We just did one.
It does.
That went through in Beech Grove, that was a great GMP for their police headquarters, that was finished last year. It's used all over the place. And it should be, the process should be terminated if it's not advantageous. That's the whole point.
Any more comments, questions?
Ann or Manny, one of you also help with help me understand the language and why it's so strong here that on section 5 where it says the resolution shall not be replaced or amended, nor shall council adopt any law, ordinance, or resolution that adversely affects this resolution.
Because if it does, then any work, so for example, if you pass this, this is the foundational document that allows you to use this procurement method. Say you do this, and then you start 10 of these, and then the council all of a sudden decides to tweak this or to blow it up or whatever, well, now you've wasted the ability to move forward on those 10 projects. So this kind of, because you don't have an admin policy that, that prevents a look-back period. You know, some folks have yeah, you can't look back at a resolution you passed for 6 months or whatever. So this prevents a subsequent council from undoing the work.
So that makes perfect sense, and I appreciate the explanation. Wouldn't a more prudent approach be to have that type of resolution in place that says, hey, you know, once something's started, we can't pull the rug out on that particular project, but at any point in time, if they wanted to change this process, they could, because the first part of Section 5 also says, you know, the no conflict part, which means anything else that we've done to try to bring as much oversight as possible to things, it seems kind of like we're saying we're going to go ahead and throw that out the window here on this.
No,
if I'm reading that correctly.
Because this is the foundation, so this is, without this, you can't, this is step one. Without this being passed the way it is, you can't take any other step. The oversight is in every other step after this. It's in the RFPQ, it's in the committee meetings, the selection process, and then the scoping period agreement, and then the ultimate BOT agreement. So you have you know, 10 or 15 touch points throughout the process. All this does is allow you to start that process.
And maybe I can help hearing your concerns. This just allows the start of the BOT project for anything. Every single one of them, regardless of the project, has to come back to council, whoever the sitting council is, for contract approval. So it's, yeah, it's a blanket that the city can go and explore BOT projects. The contract itself comes back for approval. And ultimately, any debt obligation associated with it, you'll have.
Oh yeah, that's without question.
Series of ways to stop a project should you want to.
Right.
And there are a multitude of delivery systems that the city can utilize for a project. This is no different. It really is no different. If you go down a CMC, it's the same process. You can initiate that at your will. It's still got to come to the council first.
This just happens to be the only one that requires this foundational document to be passed by council.
And this would refer to specific projects, with one project at a time.
So each individual project
Each
would have
project
to.
would come back. Yep, have its own procurement process, have its own meetings, have its own agreement that will come back here.
And so it's not like we can go build 10 fire stations without getting any kind of council approval. You still hold the keys to the finances, you still hold the keys to debt obligations. Everything comes back through. This just says, hey, Westfield administration team, you can go explore BOT and potentially build one.
I mean, I'm not an attorney, right, but Section 4, I mean, the way it reads, though, it does read that any officer of the council and member of the committee are hereby authorized to take any and all actions and execute any documents or certificates that such officers deem necessary or desirable to effect the foregoing resolutions.
You want to amend it to remove that sentence?
I mean, right, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's.
Yeah, if that bothers you, we
It's
could.
just it's very explicit that, you know, you could go to Mike Johns and he could sign off and it doesn't have to go to anybody else. I mean, and that's, and then.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody's
practically,
beholden
it's
to
not how
it.
it's going to work, but I get your concern. So if you want to approve it, removing that sentence of Section 4, that's fine with me.
Couldn't we just take out the whole section?
Well, no, because remember,
one
we need the second sentence
Any such actions taken documents or.
to ratify the scoping, specifically to the police projects, just because that had to get moving. So we don't want to, you know, destroy the good work that's been done there with the scoping and all of that. But if you want to remove the first sentence in Section 4, that's A-okay.
Can Section 4 state that it has to pass city council on each time? I mean, like the
That's
city council.
separately in statute. It wouldn't matter if it's said or not. It wouldn't matter if it said it doesn't have to come before the council, it still has to. So if you remove the first sentence of Section 4, I think that addresses Councilman Fry's and yours concern mainly, and Councilman Spoljaric's. And then it would still be utilized the same way. Nothing else changes about the process. It would all come back, It would all be public, RFPQ, all of it.
So in total, section 4 would say, any such actions taken or documents or certificates executed and delivered are hereby ratified, confirmed, and approved.
That's correct. And by definition, that only means the police project, because that's the only one that's before today.
Cindy, Scott?
Say it again.
No, I mean, I just,
I can get my arms around it with that removed. With that in there, I can't. Just for whatever that's worth.
Cindy, I want to know what you think. I mean,
I can probably be okay with it again, with that amendment taking out the first sentence of section 4.
Okay. Do I have a motion on Resolution 23-117?
I move to approve Resolution 23-117 under the following condition, that sentence 1, the first sentence of section 4 is struck from the ordinance, or from the resolution, sorry.
Motion made by Counselor Gilbert as changed, and seconded by Counselor Fry. Do you have that change, Marla?
Got it?
Okay.
Ready to go?
Call the roll, please.
Okay, sounds good. Victor McCarty,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Cindy Spiljerik,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, counselors.
Thank you.
Next item is a 2023 guest services write-off. And it is up for, I have a motion to approve the write-off summary as presented.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion made by Victor McCarty, I think, and seconded by Counselor Willis. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Cindy Spiljerik,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Victor McCarty,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Our next item is the approval of the 2024 council meeting dates. Are there any questions regarding those dates?
Just wanted to note the reason why the second meeting in January is on the 5th Monday is because APC and RDC, they've already approved their meeting dates, which will be the 4th Monday. So conflict there, so this had to be the next Monday.
Do I have a motion to approve the dates?
Motion to approve?
Have a second?
Second?
Okay, motion made by Counselor McCarty, seconded by Counselor Willis. Would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Cindy Spiljerik,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Our next item is any residents who wish to address the council this evening? We have a blue card. There, it's like Judy Shuck.
Hello? Is this on? Okay. My name is Judy Stanley Shuck, 209 West Main Street, Westfield, Indiana. A long time there. But I would just, as a fifth-generation community citizen, that was taught by my generations before me to serve the community. I would like to thank you for these past 4 years, and you, Cindy, many, many more, for the service that you have given to our community. You brought integrity and professionalism, even though sometimes the public didn't see that. I understood that. And you always listened and respected me on my concerns, because I do love this community. You know, I could have left many years ago, but I didn't. And I chose to raise 5 children and several grandchildren in this community. And that's what I'm proud of. But I'm most proud that the relationship that we built together. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy.
Oh, I've got one more thing. You know, it's that book. You know, if you also supported the Westfield Preservation Alliance, and the Historical Society thanked us for doing preservation and getting many buildings on the National Registry of Historic Places. Now, if you have, doesn't look nice, but if you have a phone, you can go to your app store and you can type in UR Historic Westfield, Indiana, and it'll take you like on a historical tour, but it'll give you information like you've never heard before. Thanks to many of my partners in crime that we did a lot of research on these buildings. And here it is for you too. You are Historic Westfield, Indiana. Enjoy the tour.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Judy.
we're gonna keep adding more. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Any other comments? Okay. Clerk Treasurer comments.
I've got nothing, but I would echo what Judy said. You know, maybe I'll get to say something more formal at your last meeting, but it's been a pleasure.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Councilor Spillier.
The APC met December 4th. We had one item on consent agenda, and that was the detailed development plan for the Lions Club addition on 169th Street. The Spring Mill Center PUD amendment, which we voted on tonight, was recommended for approval. And again, the developer team was very happy and appreciative of our workshop process, so appreciate Kevin's efforts there. Kevin also outlined some changes happening in the community development department, mostly the restructuring to long-range and current planning managers, and then Weston moving into the senior associate planner position, which is a new position. And we're done with the APC there, but I want to say a few words, and I won't keep us long. Judy, for you to be here is so special tonight because, you know, this is one of our last council meetings. When I first moved here, one of the very first things I ever did was I came to the Historical Society's meeting. And I talked to you. And I talked to you several times because I kept showing up. And you made me feel so at home here from the minute I got here. And so to see you here tonight, like 20 years later, it's pretty nice. So I just want to say thank you. It meant a lot. One more thing. Okay, sorry. So 161st and 31 on the northwest corner, when I first moved here and when I started sitting in that audience, was a house with a little shack outside, if you will, and there was a little girl there. And she sold, like, I don't know if she got garage sale stuff. She had some homemade stuff, this little girl, and farm fresh eggs. And this was on the corner of 31 and 161st. And it's funny, because I just started thinking about that and how much we've grown. And again, that was right about the time that I started here with APC and BZA back in 2005. And we were about 15,000 people meet, I think, maybe. And we've grown that much. We didn't have a mayor. We didn't have a city. We were a town with a town manager. We owned our utilities. There was no Grant Park, no Monon and Midland Trails really through here. So many changes in all these years. And I'm really excited to see what the next council in the next 20 years is going to hold. So I hope we left you in a good spot for all that you can do for the next 20 years. And thanks, everybody. It's been really great. The staff's here is awesome. People say government workers are terrible, and they are exactly the opposite. So thank you, everybody. That's it.
Any other comments, councilors? Okay, if you bear with me, I've got a couple comments to make here. And wish we had more folks here. Hopefully somebody's listening to this. But I would like to take a moment to really compliment this council for the efforts it's made specifically over the last 2 years. Toward that, I'm pleased to report that we really have successfully managed fiscal resources through strong conservative financial leadership. In addition, during the last couple of years, recognizing the need to improve our city processes and procedures, we work with the clerk's office, we work with the administration, and we were able to accomplish a number of items that we should all be quite proud of. I'm going to go through some of these. We approved a $5 million contribution to construct the YMCA. We approved a new city investment policy, which in 2023 has led to investment earnings in excess of $3 million. We approved the codification of city ordinances to ensure their availability to the public and certainly to the new council. We facilitated the recapture of $6 million in loans made to the city, by the city, to Grant Park. We lowered the city tax rate by 8% by balancing the budget and reducing borrowing. That's 8%. We took it from 78 cents down to 72 cents. Okay. We averaged $42 million in cash-based reserves for each of the last 3 years. We scored a AA+ rating with Standard & Poor's Global Ratings for the first time since 2012. We passed a resolution to revise and update the city's comprehensive plan in 2024. We authorized over $3 million in stormwater infrastructure for downtown. We prohibited the use of public records for commercial solicitation purposes. We established a policy requiring all projects to be put out to bid. We authorized the sale of city-owned property to allow for future downtown development. We put our responders first by adding personnel to our fire and police department. As a matter of fact, we added from 20 to 2023, we added 33% to our police force, 31% to our fire department. We've also added the equipment and new facilities for our fire and police. We've approved the creation of a Westfield Preservation Commission to better understand and protect our history. We've approved and began the process of moving to a second-class city in 2028. And finally, we set the tone for the developers to bring only their best projects to Westfield. So as we near the end of our term, I am pleased to report that we've achieved these goals, and I think we're going to leave the city in better shape than we found it. That's my comments. With that, we'll close tonight's meeting. Thank you all for attending.